விளையாட்டு என்றாலே அது ஆண்களுக்கானது என கருதும் பலர் மத்தியில் பல சவால்களையும் கடந்து இன்று கோலாலம்பூர் காற்பந்தாட்ட குழுவின் தலைமை பயிற்றுனராக திகழ்கிறார் 27 வயதான மலேசிய பெண்மணி கேஷிகா சுப்பாராவ். மான்செஸ்டர் யுனைடெட் அணியின் தீவிர ரசிகையான இவருக்கு சிறுவயது தொடக்கத்திலேயே காற்பந்து மீது மிகுந்த ஆர்வம் இருந்தது. எனினும் மலேசியாவில் காற்பந்தாட்ட துறையில் ஒரு பெண்ணாக ஒரு இந்தியராக தான் தலைமை பயிற்றுனராக உருவெடுத்த பயணம் அவ்வளவு எளிதாக அமைந்துவிடவில்லை என்கிறார் கேஷிகா.
My journey in football started when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So my dad used to be a semi-professional footballer. So my first exposure to sport was actually football. And we had his photos from his playing days, trophies around the house. And I was very fascinated by them. But then later on, I started also watching Manchester United, and I was very excited about them. I loved the way they played. I didn't understand much being that young, but that's my first memory of liking football, having passion for the sport. But back then, like this was maybe 20 plus years ago in Malaysia, girls and women weren't allowed to really play football. There wasn't any opportunity. I went to various different academies and places, but I was told that they didn't have any other girls, so it won't be appropriate for me to be there. So going through that, then I ventured into basketball, volleyball, but I always wanted to be part of football some way, somehow. So when I was about 14, I started writing football articles. I had a football blog, and then from there, I started applying for like sports writer position with European-based media companies.
தற்போது மகளிர் உதவி அமைப்பின் ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் அம்பாசடர் எனும் விளையாட்டுத்துறை தூதராகவும் திகழும் கேஷிகா கடந்த 10 ஆண்டுகளுக்கும் மேலாக மலேசிய அணிகளை தவிர்த்து அமெரிக்கா, அரபு நாட்டைச் சேர்ந்த அணிகளுக்கும் பயிற்சி அளித்துள்ளார். மற்ற நாடுகளுடன் ஒப்பிடும்போது மலேசியாவில் பெண்கள் காற்பந்து துறையில் ஈடுபடுவதற்கான வாய்ப்புகள் குறைவாக காணப்படுவதை கேஷிகா சுட்டிக்காட்டினார்.
So I've coached in 3 different countries by now. And I think in Malaysia, we are still quite backwards. A lot of the time, a lot of people that I've come across within the industry, sports industry in general, they have this idea that women shouldn't be in sport. So we are quite backwards, but it's not just people maybe at the top. It's also everybody else in between. Like, for instance, if you have a co-worker that believes women shouldn't be treated equally as a coach or a player or whatever that may be, that makes it really, really difficult to do your job. But also, it becomes quite discouraging for younger female coaches, players to want to join in because there's so much challenges and things to go through before you can even start thinking about doing a good job at what you're, hired for. So I think in Malaysia in particular right now, we are heading towards the right direction, but it's not to a point where we can compete with other countries because a lot of the time we are forced to have a quota of women working here, a rule where there needs to be female team. And it doesn't come from the clubs or the management or the organizations themselves to want to have women inside their organization. It's just that they have to fulfill certain codes so that they're not criticized by people on the outside. A few years back, when I first came back to Malaysia, I was just coaching this, it was a very beginner's football session. Some of the parents of kids that I was coaching made a complaint on me to the management, the higher-ups. How could you hire a young Indian female to coach football? So the higher-ups asked them, like, why is that an issue? And this person said, there's no way a young Indian female coach would understand football. So to me, that was very, very shocking at the time. But since then, there's so much more incidences like that where people tend to prefer a male coach or someone of a different race that's male to coach their kids rather than an Indian female coach. But I also find that it's quite hard to change that because they internalize that discrimination so much.
எத்தனை இடர்பாடுகள் வந்தாலும் அவற்றை எதிர்கொண்டு துவண்டு போகாமல் முன்னேறி செல்லும் மன தைரியமும் வலிமையும் இன்றைய கால பெண்களுக்கும் தேவை என்கிறார் இவர்.
I feel like my biggest achievement is not giving up and got myself to this point where I do feel like right now I am at a point where maybe 10 years ago I would have just thought it's quite impossible. So I'm very proud of myself for getting myself to this point. And then my biggest achievement as a coach is the relationship that I have with my players right now. I think that is something that's hard to achieve and is very unique. So to me, I feel like that's a massive achievement.
வாய்ப்புகளும் வெற்றிகளும் ஒருவருக்கு தானே அமைவது கிடையாது. அதற்குண்டான வழிகளை அமைத்துக் கொண்டு முயற்சிகளை மேற்கொள்ளும் போதுதான் உலகம் நம்மையும் ஒரு சாதனையாளராக அடையாளம் காண்கிறது என்பதற்கு கேஷிகா நமக்கு ஓர் உதாரணம். மேலும் பல அண்மைய செய்திகளுக்கு வணக்கம் மலேசியாவுடன் இணைந்திருங்கள். எங்கும் எப்போதும் வணக்கம் மலேசியா. நான் வேதகுமாரி வெங்கடேசன்.